What's up, everyone? Welcome back to a reef tank field trip episode on Tidal Gardens. This one features a show-stopping 1,000-gallon SPS reef by Ryan Reeves that I saw while visiting Dallas, Texas. It's not every day that you get to see an aquarium this size, let alone a meticulously curated SPS reef. Buckle up, guys. This tank is epic. Before we get into the details of this tank, please take a quick moment to subscribe to this channel. I love doing tank tours and taking a look at the designs people come up with and hearing about the decision making that went into putting them together. Subscribing and hitting that notification bell is a good way to stay notified whenever we upload new content such as this. This reef tank is a stunning 1,000-gallon custom aquarium built by Planet Aquarium. It measures 10 feet long by 5 feet wide by 32 inches high, and get this, guys, it's glass. If you see a gigantic viewing pane, let's say in a public aquarium for example, it's always acrylic. Typically, aquariums of this size are made from acrylic for both structural integrity and weight. Acrylic can flex a little bit without failure, while glass really cannot. And the seams that hold acrylic tanks together are orders of magnitude stronger than that tiny bit of silicone that holds glass tanks together. Still, if I could go with glass, I would, because of how easily acrylic scratches. I love the fact that this aquarium is glass. Now, to accomplish this, it needed to be built with 3/4 inch thick glass and then further reinforced with steel to provide additional strength against all that water pressure. The tank was designed as an in-wall tank with 2 viewable sides. The main view obviously is incredible, but even viewing the tank from the side is impressive given that 60 by 32 inch viewing pane. That's larger than most people's show tanks. Holding up this tank is a beefy steel powder-coated stand. One interesting thing about this stand is the integrated catwalks. You can probably imagine that it would be difficult to get into a tank this high. Now, having a stable platform to stand on goes a long way. On the front side of the aquarium though, it's crazy. There are these removable stones that reveal steel inputs where catwalks can be placed into. We're going to go over the equipment in greater detail later in the video, but first let's talk about the livestock. In terms of coral, this reef is an Acropora-dominated SPS tank. These colonies are simply massive. The proportions, though, are deceptive, and there's 2 factors at work here. The first thing is the overall scale of the tank. If I didn't mention how big the tank was, one could squint their eyes a little and could imagine that it was a smaller sized aquarium with modest sized colonies. Sure, it's still going to be a big tank, but once you realize the true size of the aquarium, you realize how big those colonies must be to fill that space. The second factor at work is the physics of water. Water does a funny thing optically when viewing through greater distances. Water compresses things visually. Looking through the glass from the front pane, it looks like that colony isn't that far away. But when you see it from the side, it's easily 4 to 5 feet away, and it's way bigger than you thought. For example, looking through the front glass, I felt like I could reach out and touch the back glass. In reality though, there was no way that was happening without physically climbing into the aquarium. I'm not going to go over every big name coral in this tank, but you can bet that the most highly desirable color morphs are well represented in this collection. For example, that one colony that looks like it's going to blow right off the rocks is a giant homewrecker acro colony, and don't worry, it's since been re-epoxied down. As for fish, there's a small group of tangs, a hippo tang, a black tang, an Achilles tang, and a sailfin tang. There are also 8 lyre-tail anthias, 2 dragonface pipefish, a hellfritch's firefish, a filefish Raptasia control, and 2 bluethroat triggers, and a candy basslet that was hiding somewhere in the rockwork. Now, the idea for those bluethroat triggers was to have both a male and a female, but they both turned out to be males. This is a fairly conservative stocking of such a large aquarium, and I'm okay with it. There are enough fish in there to provide benefits to maintaining the tank without overcrowding. As far as inverts go, there really aren't that many. Those bluethroat triggers I mentioned earlier, yeah, they kinda eat shrimp. So unfortunately, there's no easy ick control like skunk cleaner shrimp in this tank. I also noticed that there are no snails. An interesting thing that Ryan decided to do was to go with urchins. Now, I would be the first to admit that urchins are better at controlling algae than most snails. They can even clear out coralline algae, thus making more room for stony coral growth. I struggle with urchins though, because they are massive bulldozers and regularly carry stuff away. In this reef, however, the corals for the most part have grown onto the rocks, or they're pretty well secured, making urchin bulldozing less of a concern. Urchins, as far as algae control, are really good, so this was a conscious choice on Ryan's part to go with a better herbivore and work around the limitations. Now that we've taken a cursory look at the livestock, let's get into the inner workings of a tank like this. This system would not be complete without a mechanical room, and this one has one that's situated behind the aquarium. The mechanical room is a nice open area with plenty of space to move around and work. Take a look over here. There's a floor drain just in case something goes really wrong, which is a nice touch. The other benefit of having the mechanicals located in their own space is that all the noise generated by the equipment and water movement is isolated and it doesn't noise pollute the living space. Whenever you have all this water in the middle of a house, you absolutely have to plan for dealing with humidity. The kind of evaporation that happens on a tank this size is immense, and you could easily destroy everything if it's not handled. The house itself has a geothermal HVAC system, but in this mechanical room is a separate geothermal HVAC just to handle the aquarium. There's also an HRV air exchanger to continuously swap out air, but it's only marginally useful on many days because the humidity in Dallas is around 50% a lot of the time. At that point, it's all up to the geothermal HVAC. Looking around in this room, you can see a quarantine tank, a frag tank, an RO water station, utility sink, and of course the sump. Let's first talk about this sump. The sump is a custom design by Trigger Systems that measures 94.5 inches long by 32.5 inches wide by 24.5 inches tall, making this sump roughly 325 gallons. It has a number of separate chambers, one for the filter socks, another to hold biobricks, and the remainder to hold rock. I like that the sump is mostly sticking out from under the main display. In most home setups, the sump is located directly under the display tank inside the stand to save floor space. If you have the room though, I would much rather see it offset entirely like Ryan has done here. There's a lot of maintenance work that happens in and around the sump, and it's a pain to do all that work squeezing into a tight aquarium cabinet. The last thing that I'll mention about this sump is that there's a 2.5 inch drip tray that goes all the way around it, and it's plumbed into the floor drain. It's not common, but Ryan mentioned that there was once a small leak from a bulkhead, and another time there was a leak from the manifold that was caught by the drip tray before it made a big mess on the floor. Let's move on to the flow in this system. I guess we can start with the overflow box. This aquarium has an external coast-to-coast overflow. If you've seen my field trips to other aquariums, you may have noticed a recurring theme with these overflows. They all incorporate a triple drain system in a being animal configuration to eliminate sound. One of the loudest things in an aquarium setup is a sound of water rushing down an overflow, and this helps quiet that down substantially with minimal cost. It just takes pre-planning to have that triple drain system from the beginning. An interesting wrinkle to this overflow box is that it has sectional dividers allowing for the installation of Tonsi wave boxes and have the output plumbed through the side of the aquarium. Now this is the first time I've seen someone do this. Usually, the wave box sits right in the aquarium, but by incorporating them into the overflow, they're completely hidden. Tonsi wave boxes produce a pleasant back and forth surge motion. On smaller aquariums, the back and forth frequency of the motion, it's a little too fast. But in larger aquariums, it has a much more pleasing aesthetic. Having said that, there's a lot of other technologies providing flow in this tank, so let's quickly go over those. SPS tanks rely on flow more than any other type of system. Can you grow acropora in lower flow? Sure. Would they fare better in higher flow? Definitely. To provide this flow, Ryan is using a combination of powerful return pumps and large power heads inside the aquarium. The power heads are fairly straightforward. He's using a combination of Ecotech MP60s and MaxSpec Gyre 280s. Those represent the largest power heads those manufacturers offer. The return system is where the flow gets interesting. There are 2 return pumps on this sump. Having multiple return pumps has the dual benefit of additional water flow back into the main tank, but also some level of redundancy in the case one pump fails or is in need of some kind of maintenance. The 2 return pumps in this system are an Abyss 200 and an Abyss 400. If you're familiar with the Abyss brand, it's known for incredible build quality, being very powerful, and very expensive. The smaller of the 2 pumps, the Abyss 200, runs a manifold that provides a feed to a number of devices. After that, it then goes up to the tank to feed 3 1-inch C-swirl return oscillators that have pen ductor attachments at their output, further increasing the flow that they provide. The C-swirls provide a nice randomized flow as they pan back and forth. I like the manifold on this pump because it allows for some degree of experimentation with new devices. As reef hobbyists, it's only natural to try out different things on occasion, and having the ability to feed off a new device from the existing return is very convenient. At various times in this tank's history, Ryan experimented with an ozone reactor, a diatomaceous earth filter, a biopellet reactor, etc., etc. Right now, it is feeding a protein skimmer and a calcium reactor. The larger of the 2 pumps, the Abyss 400, powers 2 return lines that have fixed pen ductors, so you can only imagine the flow being generated there. One part of this return system that was not on at the moment is installed into the ceiling above the tank. Up there is a 100-gallon surge tank that you can see the feed from the Abyss 400 going up there as well as a surge output coming down. The cool thing about this surge tank is that it's controlled by a motorized ball valve. Most times I've seen surge tanks, they're either toilet flap designs or a Carlson surge design that has no moving parts. The problem with both the toilet flap and Carlson surge device is that both before and after each surge, there's a lot of bubbles introduced into the aquarium as well as a lot of noise. This particular design eliminates most of that by closing the ball valve before any air is sucked down into that surge pipe. Let's now talk about lighting. First off, I have to mention this absolutely crazy motorized canopy to reveal access to the lighting from the front. I guess this is real stone and it must weigh hundreds of pounds. Now in the trailer video, someone in the comments mentioned that this stone looked out of place. But this stone tile is used elsewhere in the room, so it ties into the overall space more than it might seem. So when I go to someone's house, I'm going to focus on their tank and not just randomly shoot their entire place, some sense of privacy, right? Anyway, back to the lighting. Ryan's been in the hobby since the 90s, so he was very reluctant to try LEDs on this tank. He was originally contemplating going with 8 400-watt, 20,000 Kelvin radium bulbs, but decided to take the plunge and go with the Gen 4 Ecotech Radion Pros. That decision worked out great, because according to Ryan, his corals have never looked better, and in the process, saved a ton of money in electricity over the metal halides. I have to admit, I am so happy to hear this, because I was going with the exact same fixture in the new setup, and my biggest worry was how they would color up SPS. The other lighting wrinkle in this system is a set of 3 solar tubes for supplemental daylight lighting during the waking hours. In Dallas, I would expect less difference in light going from winter to summer compared to Ohio where I am, so the light is probably a lot more consistent from the solar tubes. To handle chemistry, this tank relies on a combination of water changes, a large calcium reactor, and dosing of trace elements as well as magnesium. The calcium reactor is a 12-inch geo that's fed from the return manifold. The dosing system is a GHL Profilux that dispenses ESV magnesium and trace elements. Although I can't really talk about it, he showed me a secret product that he's pilot testing that continuously monitors alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, potassium, carbon dioxide, oxygen, salinity, pH, ammonia, and temperature every 20 minutes and reports all that data to his phone. After I saw that, I was pretty much sold on needing one of those when they come available. Now, he goes and verifies all those test results by sending out samples for ICP testing every quarter. As for the filtration, the bulk of the work is handled by a large protein skimmer that was a custom 18-inch diameter model by Trigger Systems. In the sump are a bunch of ceramic biomedia plates that provide a lot of surface area for aerobic bacteria on the outside of the plate for nitrification, and anaerobic bacteria in the core of the plate for denitrification. The idea of these ceramic products is to mimic what happens naturally in live rock, but do so in a highly efficient fashion by providing extraordinary porosity. As I mentioned before, the filtration methodology changes on occasion as Ryan tests out other devices like biopellets, ozone, or different types of aggressive particle filtering. Okay, that does it for this tank tour of Ryan's 1,000-gallon SPS monster. Thank you very much, Ryan, for inviting me over and sharing your beautiful tank with the Tidal Gardens community. Hopefully this tank gave some of you guys some ideas that can translate to success in your own reef aquariums. Now, if you like these sort of videos, don't forget to comment, subscribe, do the bell thing, all that fun stuff. Actually, I shouldn't be so flippant on the notification thing. I talked to some people while visiting Dallas, and they gave me all this grief about not uploading videos in a while. But in reality, it was just them not getting notifications, so they missed out on months worth of content. So make sure you've signed up for those notifications. Okay, that's it from here. Good luck with your aquariums, and I hope to see you all next time. Happy reefing.